In 1970 in Australia, Churu and Baibabi were advertising Srila Prabhupada's coming to Australia. And there was a sign on the then temple in Paddington, pure devotee coming to Australia. So, pure devotee. And at that time I had just started coming to the temple and getting association with the devotees. And they were all tremendously excited about meeting a pure devotee. We were all devotees, but the big pure devotee was going to come. And their excitement and anticipation of his greatness and his purity really had a contagious effect on me. So when Srila Prabhupada finally did come, everybody hit the dust in the street of the Paddington Temple. And I thought this was a very unusual phenomena, and I was wondering, should I do it or should I not do it? Should I also do the same thing? So I wasn't sure what to do, so I participated anyway and offered obeisances, and then Srila Prabhupada went into the Paddington Temple, and amidst a very enthusiastic kirtan, he sat down on the Vyasasan. He was giving class, and of course this was my first time of seeing a pure the pure devotee, and it really was an amazing experience, an indescribable experience. The impact that Srila Prabhupada's presence had on me was absolutely profound. I knew that something was happening to me just by coming into his association, just by his coming into my vision. Something was happening to me, something purifying was happening to me, something auspicious was happening to me. And so that was the impact that I got when I first met Srila Prabhupada in Australia. And just one last thing to add to that is that I was previously studying Lobsang Rampa's books on auras. And so I was checking out Prabhupada's aura, and I was seeing around him this wonderful effulgence. He was definitely an effulgent personality. So then Prabhupada finally looked at me while I was looking at him. And while he looked at me, it was like he was looking at my soul. And it's like he knew me. And it was like the meeting of an old friend. And then Srila Prabhupada finally looked away, and then I knew that this is a pure devotee, and he certainly had a purifying impact on me, without a doubt. I got first initiation in the Glebe Temple in Sydney in 1972. One very memorable episode was when Srila Prabhupada was coming to Australia. The temple president at that time was Vegavan Prabhu and his wife Padmavati. Very nice devotees. And I said to them, Srila Prabhupada says that taking the water from the lotus feet of the pure devotee is essential for spiritual development, and that water is very, very powerful. So especially the water that has washed the lotus feet of the spiritual master. So I became totally impassioned by this particular service, that to such an extent that if I didn't do it, my life would be totally incomplete. So in that mood, I went to Bhagavan Prabhu and Padmavati, and they said, okay, look, you take the responsibility, you do it. And I took it up very enthusiastically. I had a beautiful big stainless steel bowl with warm water in it, fresh warm water, with rose petals, with scent, and there was a short little table, foot table for Prabhupada to put his foot on. I had brand new cloth for drying his feet. So when Srila Prabhupada came into the glebe temple, which was a converted, one of the rooms in a house, so he came into the hallway, and before going into the temple room is where I had organized the foot washing to take place. And it went as planned. He put up his left foot, he put up his right foot, I poured the water on, and I dried his lotus feet, and he then went into the temple room, followed by a thunderous kirtan. So I was left with this huge big bowl of sanctified water from the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. And everybody followed the kirtan, I'm left alone with it. So then right next to the temple room is the kitchen. So I went into the kitchen, and I was all alone in the kitchen. And I had all this water. And I thought, I'm going to drink this water, and it's for self-purification. But I thought, no, I can't respect prasadam in Krishna's kitchen. So I said, I'd better go out the back. So I went out the back, and there was a veranda there. So again, I was alone. So I had this huge big bowl of water, and I started drinking it all. And just drinking it and drinking it. And when I got to almost to the end, Hari Sori Prabhu came up to me and says, hey, you're not going to drink all that by yourself, are you? And I said, yes, I am. But then I reluctantly gave him the last bit. So that water from the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada had such a profound effect on my consciousness. I felt as if my feet were not touching the ground for about a week after that. I was just floating everywhere. It was such a purifying substance. And because also of my faith, my dridha, in the power of that, just like if somebody has faith in the holy name, that the holy name's power is more released. So I had I had absolutely implicit faith that water was going to purify me, and absolutely it did. I'm somehow or other still around today trying to serve his lotus feet. When I got initiated, second initiation, I got first initiation in 1972 in Glebe in Sydney. And then I got second initiation in Mayapur in 1975 in the Lotus building, Guru Purnima Day at about 11 a.m. in the morning. And this is probably the most significant event that has taken place in my life, because that's the day I got Gayatri initiation from Srila Prabhupada. So before the initiation took place, I'm thinking in my mind that I want to ask Srila Prabhupada some intelligent philosophical questions so that I can impress upon him that I'm studying his books and that I appreciate his presentation of the philosophy, and that I'm having some philosophical understanding of it. And in that way, he would appreciate my being, an intelligent disciple, trying to intelligently understand his presentation of Krishna, philosophical presentation of Krishna consciousness. But when I got in front of Srila Prabhupada, it was just me and him. My mind totally went blank. Totally blank. I'd forgotten everything. Krishna blanked me out. It was just quite incredible. So Prabhupada recited the mantras, all of the Gayatri mantras, and I repeated those mantras, and I didn't say a word. I didn't ask anything. I ended up being an obedient, submissive, a disciple by dint of Krishna's giving me a blank and just being totally in awe of Srila Prabhupada. Many years later, when I read Srila Prabhupada's books, very, very carefully, I noted that Prabhupada said that if a disciple thinks of himself as anything other than a fool in front of his spiritual master, he becomes a resident of Nadaloka, of a hellish planet. So when I thought back how Krishna blanked my mind out in front of Srila Prabhupada, I thought that Krishna saved me from trying to make some impression on Srila Prabhupada and presenting myself other than a fool. The fact that I didn't say anything in front of Srila Prabhupada kind of indicates that I'm a fool, and which was good. So I really learnt that lesson from that interaction with Srila Prabhupada. By the mercy of Krishna. By the mercy of Krishna one gets Guru, and by the mercy of Guru one gets Krishna. So Krishna is very, very merciful. Srila Prabhupada is very merciful. And I just hope that until my last breath I can always be a fool in front of Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. I remember here in Mayapur when the opening of the Mayapur Chandrodaya temple took place. It was the first mongolati with Srila Prabhupada in the Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir. Srila Prabhupada was upstairs in his room, and the mongolati was on the ground floor. It was an absolutely tumultuous mongolati, and it was led by His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And it was boisterous. It was an amazing kirtan. It was just from start to finish. It was fully ecstatic. Nothing was slow. Everyone was dancing. Everyone was practically reaching the ceilings, and it was an unforgettable mongolati. And obviously, it was the part of the auspiciousness of things to come in Mayapur. It was the inauguration of all the chanting that would follow. So after Mongolati, Tamal Krishna Maharaj went up to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada commented about the mongolati. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj came back down and made an announcement to the devotees. And he announced to the devotees that Srila Prabhupada said about that mongolati that if you all keep chanting like that, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself will personally come here and take you all back home, back to Godhead. So all the devotees gave a huge big Hari Bol to that. And so that was a very fond memory that I have of Srila Prabhupada's appreciating the kirtans in the Mayapur temple. One time in Sridham Mayapur, Srila Prabhupada was engaging us in feeding the local residents khichdi prasadam. I was one of the cooks, and cooking is not my speciality, but when Prabhupada wanted something, we would specialize in it. And we would cook this khichdi that would taste like sweet rice. it was so, not that it tastes like sweet rice, but it was so delicious that it tasted as delicious as sweet rice. So we would offer it to Srila Prabhupada. We cooked it in these huge big wots, and Srila Prabhupada would relish that, and then we would take his prasadam, and then Srila Prabhupada would, in the east side of the Bhajan Kurti, there was a little window. That window is not there now, but perhaps that should be restored, because that window is a very famous window that Srila Prabhupada used to spend quite a bit of considerable time watching the pilgrims eating the khichdi prasadam. The pilgrims could not see him, but he could see them, and he would watch them with great satisfaction. So that's another very nice memory I have of Srila Prabhupada in terms of the wonderful prasad distribution that is still going on even today on a greater and greater scale, and how fond Srila Prabhupada was of that program, and how much pleased he would be to see that that program is still being carried on today. See, Srila Prabhupada's wanting to make sure, or ensuring that nobody would, in a certain, around the Mayapur campus would go hungry, can be seen from different perspectives. One is that his compassion for other people who are genuinely suffering, because the people who are poverty-stricken in India, they really do have very poverty-stricken situations where they quite often don't get a good, substantial meal. So that perspective is his compassion. The other perspective is that prasadam distribution is spiritual compassion. So one perspective is his material compassion, which Vaishnavas are, and the other perspective is his spiritual compassion, is that by giving them prasadam, they automatically make spiritual advancement. So that's what I saw as something very significant, is that he would not ignore people's material needs, but at the same time, when he did give them their material needs, it was also had the spiritual touch to it, which I thought was quite ingenious. I have another very fond memory of when Srila Prabhupada was in the Lotus building in 1975, I believe it was 74, 75. And I somehow or other was privileged to be able to participate in preparing Srila Prabhupada's lunch prasadam. And I specifically volunteered to cook the sweet rice, because I had heard that Srila Prabhupada's recipe for sweet rice was 16 parts of milk to 1 part of rice and to 1 part of sugar, and with a little bit of camphor. And so I followed that recipe, Srila Prabhupada's recipe, religiously. Again, it was something that I took it as my life and soul to make it perfect. And it was a very hot kitchen, and you had to stir the sweet rice very slowly so that it doesn't stick, because if you don't, then it sticks, and if it sticks, then it gets burnt, then the whole thing is ruined. So you had to cook it very slowly and for a long time, and eventually it becomes a very wonderful consistency of condensed milk with rice in it, and with this wonderful flavoring. So I followed all that, and that went onto Srila Prabhupada's plate, and it went up to Srila Prabhupada's room. And then I was in the kitchen cleaning up, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj came into the kitchen. He said, "Who cooked the sweet rice?" I said, "Oh my God, what have I done? I've had it." I really thought I had. I said, "It was me." He said, "Srila Prabhupada really liked it." And it was such a relief that I'd actually pleased my spiritual master, that I did one little thing that he appreciated. So it was a great relief that I'd done one tiny bit of service that he appreciated, to such an extent that that sweet rice must have come out so good that Prabhupada appreciated it, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj came down to extend the appreciation, similar to what he did with the mongolati. So that's one little memory of causeless mercy that I got from Srila Prabhupada. The fact that Prabhupada relished it and then took the trouble, or made the effort to extend that appreciation to someone who was unknown to him, but just out of a pure appreciation for something that he relished, really says a lot for his magnanimous character of how he would appreciate everyone's service, whether it was big or small. And it was definitely a small service. It was not, the sweet rice is gone in 5 minutes. He'll get something else the next day. But it really did make my day, the fact that Srila Prabhupada did extend that appreciation. And what it says for his character is his magnanimity. How magnanimous is that? That he would appreciate just such a small thing. He was so grateful, because it wasn't a very big thing, but his appreciation was a very big thing. Srila Prabhupada said, my service was actually assisting Janani Vas Prabhu with the deity worship, and also looking after the Goshala. At that time there was about 6 cows. And word got back to Srila Prabhupada that we were hiring people to utilize the bullocks for plowing the land. So Srila Prabhupada said, why are we spending money in this way? Our devotees should do it. So Jayapataka Maharaj was plowing the land with the bullocks. There was a mantra for going left and a mantra for going right, die, die, bye, bye, and all of that. There's a way you communicate with the bullocks to get them to, plow through the land. I also was plowing the land, and another devotee called Prabhu, he was also plowing the land. And then after about a month of all of us plowing the land, we all kind of, we were really not up to plowing the land, but because Prabhupada said he wanted us to plow the land, we plowed the land. Whatever he said, whatever he wanted us to do, we would do. And then word finally got back to Srila Prabhupada that we were plowing the land, but then we were not doing other things we were supposed to do. So then we went back to doing the other things we were supposed to do, which the people who plowed the land could not do. So that was a very interesting experience that Prabhupada, what we learned from Prabhupada, that you have to do the needful sometimes. Sometimes you have to be prepared to plow the land. You also have to be prepared to not plow the land. So one time Prabhupada said, plow the land, so we plowed the land. And then another time he said, okay, no more plowing the land, you do this. So then we didn't do that. So in this way, he was training us to be his unconditional servants. That's what I learned from that particular instruction of Srila Prabhupada's. And because plowing the land is physically very challenging. And Jayapataka Maharaj was very good at it. I was very close behind him. So in this way we had a competition to see who could plow the land nicely for Srila Prabhupada. So one time in Mayapur, Srila Prabhupada, he used to give the class at the side of the bhajan courtier. And every morning he would come out for his japa before the class. And one morning he came out and he looked to the left, he looked to the right. He said, "Why you haven't cleaned this? This whole balcony, this veranda should be cleaned every day. Should be nice and clean." So he was very insistent upon that. And he was quite perturbed that it had not been done. So then myself and a couple of other brahmacharis, we really cleaned it. We got it spick and spanned, beautifully cleaned. So the next day, he came out and he looked to the left, he looked to the right, he said, "Very nice." And the way he rolls his eyes, "Oh, very nice." And then we maintained that for some time, for so many days. But then one day we had a slip where we didn't do it. Things got mixed up, schedules. And so he came out and he said, "Why you haven't done this? Why you didn't clean this? Cleanliness, we have to keep Mayapur clean." So then again we resumed the regular cleaning of that veranda for Srila Prabhupada's pleasure. So what we learned from that is that Srila Prabhupada wanted everything in Mayapur to be neat, clean, and tidy. And this is the holy dham. And so in the future city of Mayapur, we know that Srila Prabhupada wanted it to be a magnificent, glorious, unique city in the world, and at least it must be neat, clean, and tidy. So we encourage all devotees to please keep Mayapur neat, clean, and tidy. This was Srila Prabhupada's implicit instruction. So one time in Mayapur, Srila Prabhupada was giving a class shortly after the opening of the Mayapur Chandradoya Mandir. And I remember this class very specifically. And this really exemplifies Srila Prabhupada's absolutely sublime character and his humility. This was a very successful moment in his preaching achievement. He had gone to the West, he'd come back, he had built the Mayapur Chandradoya Mandir, and it was the opening ceremony. And he was clearly emotional. And the amazing thing that he said, that I remember very clearly, he said, I'm unfit to be your leader. And I couldn't understand. When I was hearing that then, it didn't register with me. But after reflection upon his words, after all these years, I can realize that out of genuine humility, he actually meant it. He would say, "I'm unfit to be your leader." He said, "Lord Chaitanya has planted you all over the world. Because previously you were associated with Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement." He said, "Actually, the credit is to you. I'm unfit to be your leader." And I could not understand it in those. I just did not know what he was talking about. at that time, as a young devotee. I was, what, 24 years old. I had been a devotee for 4 years. And I could not understand, but now I understand it, is that he actually meant it. That's what really impresses me tremendously, is that he had everything to be proud of. He had everything to boast about. But he genuinely thought he was unqualified. He said, I'm not fit to be your leader. And he actually meant it. I could never do that. As soon as I get a little bit of achievement, you start gloating, you start feeling a little bit elated, but not with Srila Prabhupada. So how can we understand, the purity of such a Mahabhagavat like Srila Prabhupada and his humility, the humility that he displayed in that instance amidst his glorious achievement. And he never ever was proud. But at the same time, he was never ever fearful of chastising people, his competitors, who didn't spread the movement according to the wishes of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So Srila Prabhupada's character of humility in the midst of his absolutely amazing achievements is something that's very hard to comprehend. It can only come from someone who's a Mahabhagavat, and that was Srila Prabhupada. Je anilo premadana koruna prachu